The light of dawn in Coruscant illuminated Padmé Amidala's face, reflecting the serenity she so desired for the future. With a tender smile, she held Anakin's hands and softly revealed, "Anakin, I'm pregnant." The news brought a mixture of surprise and joy to the Jedi, whose face lit up with a smile he rarely displayed. Despite his initial happiness, a faint trace of worry crossed Anakin's eyes. The war still haunted his days, and the thought of protecting his family began to weigh heavily on his mind. In the days that followed, Padmé couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. At first, she attributed it to the natural changes of pregnancy, but the nights became increasingly disturbing. In her dreams, hazy, fragmented images would surface, shadows obscuring the galaxy, an imposing figure in black armor, and a suffering that seemed unbearable. Padmé woke up with her heart racing, unable to shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. One such night, as she awoke from a particularly dark dream, Padmé decided to share her worries with Anakin. "I've been having strange dreams, Anakin. They seem more real than they should be." He tried to reassure her, suggesting that they were just reflections of her fears for the galaxy at war. However, on hearing the details of the visions, something in Anakin's expression changed. He had also had similar dreams before, but had chosen not to reveal them to his wife, for fear of feeding her even more anguish. As the days passed, Padmé's visions became clearer and more disturbing. She began to see details she had never noticed before. A masked figure wielding a red lightsaber, planets being destroyed, and, at the center of it all, Anakin. His presence was unmistakable, but he wasn't the same man she loved. There was something dark, cold, and completely devastating about that image. Padmé began to wonder if it was just a bad dream. Could it be that the Force was trying to show her something? In search of answers, Padmé began to withdraw into long moments of reflection and meditation. She wasn't a Jedi, but years at Anakin's side and her connection with him seemed to have awakened something inside her. As she concentrated, the dreams became more intense, almost as if she were accessing a part of the galaxy that had previously been invisible to her. This new sensation, although fascinating, frightened her. She knew she was entering uncharted territory, and that she would need help to understand what was happening. What Padmé didn't know was that she was somehow absorbing midi-chlorians from the babies in her womb. As children of Anakin, Luke, and Leia's midi-chlorians were incredibly high, and this gradual transference seemed to be awakening a sensitivity to the Force in Padmé. One afternoon, while observing the gleaming towers of Coruscant, Padmé confided her concerns to her faithful friend and lady-in-waiting. "Something is wrong. I feel it in every fiber of my being. There's something I can't explain, but it's like I'm connected to the Force." Her friend, ever practical, suggested that Padmé seek out a Jedi to share her visions. "You need guidance, Padmé. This may be more important than we realize." Reluctant at first, Padmé decided to seek help again, but not from Anakin. Instead, she chose to speak to Obi-Wan Kenobi, someone she trusted deeply and who had always shown wisdom in times of difficulty. Padmé knew that Anakin might react with concern or try to dissuade her, but Obi-Wan could offer the calm, rational guidance she needed. When she met Obi-Wan, the conversation was frank and full of emotion. "Obi-Wan, I'm having visions, dreams, and they're unlike anything I've ever experienced. I see Anakin, but he's not himself. There's something dark, something I don't understand, but which I feel is connected to me and my son." Obi-Wan, although surprised by the revelation, listened carefully to every word, pondering what it might mean. "Padmé, these visions cannot be ignored," Obi-Wan replied in a serious but gentle tone. "If you are truly feeling the Force, it could be a sign of something greater. Perhaps your son's midi-chlorians are awakening something in you, but we need to be careful. Anakin can't know that yet. He already carries a huge burden, and this could add to his worries." Padmé agreed, but knew that keeping it a secret wouldn't be easy. As she prepared to process all the new information, Padmé felt both relieved and overwhelmed. The conversation with Obi-Wan had helped her understand a little more about what was happening, but it had also opened up new questions about the role she and her son could play in the fate of the galaxy. The future was still uncertain, but Padmé knew she was beginning to discover the pieces of a much bigger puzzle. The days following Padmé's conversations with Obi-Wan brought a worsening of the visions. During one particularly disturbing night, she dreamt of Anakin surrounded by flames, wearing black armor and wielding a red lightsaber. The pain and fury in his eyes were so real that Padmé woke up gasping, feeling the weight of terror in her chest. The feeling that this was more than a dream began to become impossible to ignore. It was as if she was seeing a future that the Force insisted on revealing. One quiet morning, as she tried to push the dark thoughts away, Padmé noticed something strange. As she reached for a cup on the table, she felt a surge of energy run through her body, and the object simply fell to the floor, even though she hadn't touched it. She stepped back, startled, staring at the broken cup. Padmé knew this was no coincidence. Something was changing inside her and, although she had no control over it, it was clear that her connection to the Force was growing. A few days later, another ability began to manifest itself. As she walked through the corridors of the Senate, Padmé felt a strong sense that something was about to happen. It was as if a silent voice in her mind was warning her of a small accident that seemed inevitable. A few moments later, an aide tripped, almost knocking over important documents in an ongoing agreement. Padmé, prepared by the intuitive warning, managed to act in time to prevent the problem from escalating. The event, although simple, confirmed for her that her intuition was becoming more acute, almost as if it were guided by something greater. While Padmé struggled to understand what was happening to her, Palpatine continued to manipulate Anakin with his skillful words. In a conversation in the Great Hall of the Senate, the Chancellor took the opportunity to plant more seeds of doubt in the young Jedi. Love can be a powerful force, Anakin, but it can also be a dangerous weakness. You would do anything to protect Padmé, wouldn't you? The concern in Anakin's eyes was evident, and Palpatine, seeing his vulnerability, continued, "Your dreams, your fears. Perhaps there are ways to prevent them from coming true. All you need is knowledge. Knowledge that the Jedi Order is afraid to share." Palpatine's words hit Anakin hard, fueling the fears he was already facing. Although reluctant to admit it, Anakin knew that his own dreams had also intensified. He saw Padmé suffering, and the thought of losing the person he loved most tormented him. Palpatine, as a master of the game, knew exactly how to exploit these feelings, leading Anakin down an increasingly dangerous path. Meanwhile, Padmé, in the midst of her own difficulties, began to feel that the visions were more than warnings. Each dream seemed to connect her to the child she was carrying, as if the Force flowed between her and the baby, showing fragments of a greater destiny. In one of these visions, she saw Anakin kneeling before Palpatine, swearing his loyalty. The image brought her to tears, feeling that time was running out to prevent this bleak future from coming true. Determined to find answers, Padmé decided to step up her efforts to control her newfound abilities. Events around her began to align with her intuition, and objects continued to react in unexpected ways to her presence. Although all of this was frightening, Padmé began to understand that the key to protecting her family might lie in accepting this connection to the Force and learning to use it, even without the traditional guidance of the Jedi. Now, with Palpatine's manipulations underway and Anakin increasingly consumed by his own doubts, Padmé knew she was at a crossroads. Her intuition told her that something terrible was about to happen, and she needed to be ready. Even without knowing how or when, Padmé felt that her role in the fate of the galaxy would be far greater than she had ever imagined. Before making the decision to go to the Jedi Council, Padmé spent hours reflecting on her options. After recent events and her conversations with Obi-Wan, she knew she couldn't ignore the signals the Force seemed to be sending her. There was something bigger at stake, something she still didn't fully understand, but which she felt was crucial for the future of Anakin and the galaxy. Padmé knew that her position as senator didn't make her the closest person to the Jedi Council, but her role as Anakin's wife and the disturbing visions she had been having couldn't be ignored. Finally, determined and full of courage, she decided to seek out the Jedi. If there's anyone who can interpret these visions and act in time, it's them, she thought, as she prepared for her visit to the temple. Padmé arrived at the Jedi Temple with a heavy heart, but determined to seek answers. The vast main hall seemed even more imposing as she crossed the space towards the council chamber. The presence of the Jedi, so serene and focused, brought her a mixture of comfort and apprehension. Despite not being a Jedi, Padmé knew that the Force was increasingly present in her life, and she needed guidance before it was too late. As she entered the chamber, she was greeted by the watchful eyes of the Jedi Masters. Mace Windu, with his rigid posture and penetrating gaze, was the first to speak. "Senator Amidala, it is unusual for us to have you visit our council. What brings you here?" Padmé hesitated for a moment, gathering her courage before explaining. "I've had visions, Masters. They show me things that I can't understand, but that I believe are important. I'm here because I feel that Anakin is in danger, and so is the galaxy." The statement brought a heavy silence to the room, as the Jedi exchanged cautious glances. Master Yoda, sitting in his elevated seat, tilted his head slightly. "Visions, you say? More than dreams, are they?" Padmé confirmed with a nod, describing the disturbing images that had been haunting her nights. Anakin kneeling before a shadowy figure, the galaxy in flames, and immeasurable suffering enveloping everyone she loved. "These visions are too real to ignore." Mace Windu crossed his arms, pondering her words. "The Force sometimes warns us about the future, but it's not always clear how to interpret it. These visions, Senator, may be a reflection of your fears, or perhaps something more. What else did you feel?" Padmé took a deep breath before revealing the strange incidents that had occurred. The cup that broke without her touching it, her growing intuition about events around her, and the constant feeling that something bigger was at stake. The Jedi listened attentively, but their expressions were difficult to read. Master Windu insisted on expressing his skepticism. "Senator, we don't doubt your sincerity, but the Force is something that requires training and discipline. Without that, visions can easily be misinterpreted." Padmé remained calm, but didn't back down. "With all due respect, Masters, I'm not just here for my dreams. I'm here because I believe Anakin needs help. He carries a weight that none of us can fully comprehend, and I sense that he is increasingly vulnerable." The mention of Anakin changed the tone of the conversation. Master Windu narrowed his eyes, reflecting on her words. "Skywalker is impulsive and has already shown difficulties in controlling his emotions. Do you believe that these visions are connected to him?" Padmé nodded, her voice firm. "Yes, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel that everything is connected. The visions, the sensations, even this connection I have with the Force. Anakin is at the center of it all, and if we don't do something, I'm afraid of what might happen." Master Yoda interrupted, his voice calm but full of wisdom. "Help you seek for him and for yourself, perhaps. Difficult, predicting the future is. But of course, the danger seems to be." Padmé seized the moment to plead. "Please, Masters, if there is anything you can do to protect Anakin, I beg you to consider it. He trusts you. More than anyone." The tension in the room was palpable. The Jedi knew that what Padmé was bringing could not be ignored, but they also understood the risk of acting too hastily. After a few minutes of silent reflection, Master Windu finally spoke. "Senator, we will take a serious look at your words. The Council will decide on the best course of action. For now, we suggest that you continue to share your concerns with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is closer to Anakin than any of us." Padmé left the chamber with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She knew she had planted the seed of doubt in the Council, but she also felt that time was running out. As she walked through the corridors of the temple, her visions came back to her, more vivid than ever. She could only hope that the Jedi would make the right decision before it was too late. After hearing Padmé's report, the Jedi Council met as a matter of urgency to discuss Anakin's situation. Her words had sparked alarm among the Masters, especially given Palpatine's growing influence over the young Jedi. Master Windu, always cautious, was direct. "Skywalker is becoming unstable." Padmé's visions only confirm what we already feared. Perhaps we should act before he becomes a risk to the Order and the galaxy. The other Jedi agreed, but their opinions on how to proceed differed. Master Yoda, with his characteristic wisdom, pondered, to remove Skywalker, perhaps we can. But with caution, we must act. Already dangerous, the proximity to the Chancellor is. The decision was made. Anakin would be assigned to missions far from the Senate, under the pretext of helping the Republic in peripheral systems. The Council hoped that the distance between him and Palpatine would weaken the Chancellor's influence, allowing Anakin to rebalance emotionally and reconnect with Jedi ideals. When Anakin was called before the Council to receive his new orders, his reaction was immediate and intense. "You're driving me away on purpose," he accused, his eyes blazing with frustration. "You've never trusted me. You've never given me the respect I deserve. Now you want to exile me?" Mace Windu tried to explain in a firm tone. "This is not an exile, Skywalker. It's an opportunity to fulfill your role as a Jedi, away from political distractions." But Anakin was not convinced. It was clear to him that the Masters were isolating him, and his anger only grew. Meanwhile, Palpatine, always attentive to the Council's movements, quickly learned of the attempt to remove Anakin. With his ability to manipulate, he found the Jedi in the Senate, knowing that he would seek solace. "Anakin, the Jedi have once again shown that they don't trust you, haven't they?" said the Chancellor, his voice soft but full of innuendo. "They're afraid of your power. They know you're special, more powerful than any of them. That's why they want to keep you away." Palpatine took the opportunity to plant the next stage of his plan. "I do, however, trust you, Anakin. I need your help on a delicate mission. The Separatist leaders on Mustafar are about to destabilize our peace efforts. Only you have the ability to deal with it. You can bring an end to the war." Palpatine's words were carefully calculated, feeding Anakin's ego while pushing him further away from the Jedi. Feeling betrayed by the Council and flattered by Palpatine's trust, Anakin accepted the mission without hesitation. He was determined to prove his worth and show the Jedi that they were wrong to underestimate him. When he informed Obi-Wan of his decision, his friend tried to warn him. "Anakin, why are you taking orders from Palpatine? That's not the responsibility of a Jedi." But Anakin, consumed by anger and a sense of rejection, only replied, "At least he trusts me, Obi-Wan, more than you do." As Anakin prepared to leave for Mustafar, the Jedi Council began to realize that their attempt to protect him had failed. Mace Windu, disappointed, said, "We made a mistake. Skywalker is going where we can't reach him, and Palpatine is behind it." Master Yoda, regretful, only replied, "Too late, perhaps. We can still act carefully. But it will be difficult." The tension in the Jedi Temple increased as Anakin walked further and further into the center of Palpatine's web of manipulation. Padmé couldn't ignore the growing sense of danger in her heart. The visions became more and more intense, showing Anakin on Mustafar, surrounded by darkness and consumed by rage. Determined to save the man she loved and protect her son, she sought out Obi-Wan. "He needs us, Obi-Wan. He needs our help, I know it." The Jedi Master, though reluctant, knew he couldn't ignore Padmé's plea. They set off together for Mustafar, hoping to bring Anakin back before it was too late. When they reached the lava planet, Padmé got off the ship and found Anakin in the center of an industrial complex, the intense heat of the place reflecting the chaotic state of his mind. "Anakin," she called, her voice laden with despair and love. He turned slowly, his gaze dark but still showing traces of who he had been. "Why are you here, Padmé?" His voice was rough, but there was a tremor of vulnerability. "I came to save you, Anakin. You don't have to do that, you don't have to get lost." As they talked, Obi-Wan appeared, coming down the ramp from the ship. Anakin's expression changed instantly from doubt to anger. "So that's it? What did you bring him here for?" he roared, taking threatening steps. Padmé stepped between them, trying to calm the situation. "No, I came because I love you, Anakin. Please listen to me. Think of our son." But her words didn't seem to penetrate the wall of fury that Anakin had built up in his mind. He raised his hand, anger clouding his judgment. When Anakin used the Force to strangle her, Padmé felt despair rise within her. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. A wave of energy coursed through her body, and she instinctively used the Force to push him away. Anakin was thrown backwards, falling hard to the ground and hitting his head against a metal structure. He lay motionless for a few seconds, while Padmé, panting, tried to understand what he had done. Obi-Wan looked on, amazed at her display of power, which seemed directly connected to the child she was carrying. As Anakin regained his senses, he saw Padmé holding her belly and crying. The connection he had lost for so long seemed to be coming back in full force. He felt the Force flowing, not only from Padmé, but also from his son. The visions of darkness began to fade, giving way to memories of love and hope. "Padmé," he whispered, his voice full of regret. She knelt beside him, holding his hand. "You can still come back, Anakin. It's up to you to make the right choice." Obi-Wan watched carefully, but did not intervene. He knew the moment was crucial, and any wrong word could undo the progress Padmé had made. Anakin stood up slowly, his gaze finally clearer. "What I've done," he muttered, looking down at his hands as if he could see the weight of every wrong decision he had made. Padmé put her hand on his face. "There's still time. Come with us. We can start again." Anakin closed his eyes, letting her words penetrate his soul. The trio returned to the ship, but Anakin hesitated before entering. He gazed at the scorching horizon of Mustafar, as if saying goodbye to his old life. "Palpatine will never forgive me for this. He'll hunt us down." Obi-Wan replied firmly, "We will face him together, Anakin. You are not alone." With one last look at Padmé, Anakin entered the ship, finally accepting that the path he had taken was not his final destination. As the ship took off, Anakin felt a mixture of relief and dread for what was to come. He knew that the road to redemption would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, there was hope. Padmé held his hand, offering him silent comfort. "We'll protect our family together." Anakin nodded, looking at her gratefully. He had finally understood that true strength came from love and connection, not raw power. Obi-Wan, although relieved at Anakin's return, knew that the challenge was not yet over. Palpatine would not accept this betrayal easily, and the fight for the freedom of the galaxy had only just begun. However, at that moment, the small victory of bringing Anakin back into the light was enough to renew his strength. The trio set off towards the future, knowing that, united, they could face anything. After returning to Coruscant, Anakin reflected on everything that had happened. Palpatine's manipulations, his own wrong choices, and Padmé's unwavering love that had brought him back to the light. He finally saw clearly the dark pattern that had enveloped his life. In a moment of clarity, he looked at Obi-Wan and said, "Palpatine, he's the Sith Lord we're looking for. It all makes sense now. He's always been manipulating us, dividing the Order and the Republic to consolidate his power." When they arrived at the Jedi Temple, the Council was immediately informed of Anakin's revelation. Mace Windu, alongside the other Masters, made the decision to confront Palpatine. "If this is true, he cannot remain in power. The galaxy depends on us to stop this threat." Windu and a group of Jedi went to the Senate, where they found Palpatine in his office. The ensuing battle was intense, with the Chancellor revealing his true power. However, Windu's incomparable skill prevailed. With one swift stroke of his lightsaber, the Jedi Master put an end to Darth Sidious's reign of terror. After the confrontation, peace seemed within reach for the Republic. However, Anakin knew there was still something he needed to do. At a meeting with the Jedi Council, he stood before the Masters and confessed, "I have something to say. Padmé and I married in secret. I know I've broken the code of the Order, and that's why I'm stepping down. I want to be with my family and live in peace." The Council, although disappointed by the revelation, recognized Anakin's genuine regret and granted his request. "May the Force be with you, Skywalker," said Yoda with a tone of acceptance. Anakin and Padmé left for Naboo, where they could finally enjoy a period of tranquility. It was there that Padmé gave birth to twins Luke and Leia. Anakin's connection with the Force had not disappeared, but he now used it to protect and guide his family. He found peace in the simplicity of life on Naboo, far from wars and political intrigue. Each day with Padmé and the children made him reflect on the importance of love and compassion, something he had forgotten in his quest for power. Years later, Anakin returned to the Jedi Temple, bringing with him Luke, now old enough to be a youngling. He stood before the council and asked to be reinstated in the Order. "I have learned that the Force is not an instrument of power, but a guide to peace and balance. If you accept me, I want to teach that to my son and perhaps to others as well." The council, with Yoda and Obi-Wan among its members, recognized Anakin's transformation. He was reintegrated into the Order, not as the impetuous young man of before, but as a wiser Jedi, shaped by love, repentance, and redemption. Thus, the story of Anakin Skywalker entered a new phase, marked by light and rebirth.